reopening survey. Tonight, we're going to be talking about our best thinking and planning around reopening schools. After this presentation, we're trying to keep it to 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to open it up to you. We want to know what your questions and concerns are. For the question answer portion of the meeting, please use the chat function at the bottom right-hand side of your screen to type in your questions. Please do not use the Q&A function, as we will not be checking that. So I'm going to repeat that. You want to use the chat function if you want to send us questions. We have a team of people monitoring these questions, but of course we may not be able to get to every single one tonight, depending on the volume and the range of questions. However, we want to make sure no question goes unanswered. So all questions will be copied from the chat at the end of this session and entered into an FAQ, frequently asked questions, or otherwise responded to. If after this session you still have questions, feel free to email these questions to the Reopening Task Force email. That email address, for those of you who are interested, is BSD Reopening. So BSD Reopening at bsdvt.org. After tonight's and tomorrow's town halls, because we were doing one for all staff tomorrow, slightly different, we will post these slides and an FAQ to our Reopening Task Force page on the district website. Thank you again for joining, and please welcome again BSD Superintendent Tom Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. Prusak. So again, very excited to be here tonight and really interested in hearing your feedback, and also wanting to make sure that we want to make sure we are being very clear about where we are in the planning process. So we're excited to be here, and I wanted to introduce two people who we've been working closely with, who you probably know. We have Andrew Stiles, our president of the BEA, and Dwight Brown, our chair for AFSCME. And so I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves as we get started, because we've been working in very close partnership since I got here 15 days ago, and we're just very excited about the work that we've been able to do together. So Andrew?
Hold on, Tom, I'm going to interrupt. I'm really sorry, everybody. But I did get a text from someone in the district who said that we've reached our capacity for Zoom, which is odd because of the type of account we're using. So it says that she can see this on the YouTube channel, watching it on YouTube. I do not have the address for that. I'm wondering if someone else of the panelists, maybe Avalon, you have that for people.
I do. I have the YouTube link, and I can put it into the chat here where everyone will be able to see it.
Well, except those who can't get on won't be able to.
And I can post it on our Facebook page.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that, everybody.
No, it's important. We want to make sure everyone is available, is able to see the town hall and to participate in the town hall. So it's important. Thank you for flagging that. And maybe Avalon should put that at the bottom of each of the slides so people can see it as we're going.
Oh, good idea.
Mr. Stiles.
Hi, I'm Andrew Stiles. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Edmonds Elementary School, and I am the president of the Burlington Education Association, which represents the nurses, paraeducators, and teachers in the district.
And Mr. Brown.
Hello, my name is Dwight Brown. I am a senior technology specialist for Burlington School District. I'm also the chapter chair for AFSCME Local 1343, and my members include property services people, which are custodial people, trades workers, bus drivers. We also represent our food service workers, whom we're very proud of, and our IT department, our IT specialist. And I'm happy to be here. The collaboration has been fantastic. Our new superintendent is a superstar, and we're trying to do this safely, and we're doing it together. And thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you both for being here. And just to reiterate the importance of our collaboration, I feel that it is extremely important that we are working together. And to Mr. Stiles and Mr. Brown, I just want to really thank you for welcoming me to the district and for just jumping right in and getting me up to speed and being so willing to work together to make this the best possible opening it could be. So with that, I'm going to introduce, I'm actually going to ask everybody on the panel to introduce themselves. So we have a lot of people viewing tonight, and then we also have a number of people who have been instrumental in the work that we're doing, who are on the call. And we want to, obviously there are many people working on this right now, but I want to make sure that you all meet everybody, meet the folks that are on the panel. So everyone's going to go around, and if you would just introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
I'll go first. My name is Joe Restaghini, and I am the principal at Champlain Elementary School. And again, thank you for coming tonight. It's important work to get our kids prepared for the new school year. I'm glad to be here with you.
I'll follow Joe. I'm Bonnie Johnson-Aiton, and I'm the new principal at Edmonds Elementary School. And I am also glad that folks are here with us. We need to do this together. So thank you for coming.
I'm Stephanie Phillips. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, and thank you for being here to share your feedback with us this evening as we plan for the return of your children.
Hi, I'm Z. Anderson Brown. I'm the Director of Human Resources for the Burlington School District. I do want to thank everybody for attending today, and together we can conquer this. This is new uncharted territory, and I appreciate the diverse partnership that we have to try to do this big lift. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Avalon Stiles Ashley. I am the interim communications specialist, and I will be moderating your questions at the end of the video.
I'm Nathan Labrie. I'm the Director of Finance at the Burlington School District and Operations, and I have been coordinating the our reopening task force.
I'm Becca McCrae, and I am the school nurse at Edmonds Middle School, and I'm also the district COVID coordinator for the task force. And I'm very sorry my camera does not work tonight.
We're happy to have you in any capacity. Did we get everybody?
Yeah, Tom, it's Victor again. I'm just coming back on to let everyone know that I'm going to monitor the chat on YouTube, and Avalon will monitor the chat on Zoom. So we'll get to questions regardless what platform this is on. There is a slight delay, just so you know, Tom, when you speak on YouTube, it appears like 10 seconds later.
Okay.
So it's sort of weird for me. I'm just letting you know that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Victor. And thank you for keeping your eye on that for us. So the purpose for tonight, again, just to reiterate, is to explain our process, where we are in the planning and what we've done up to this point, to go through the family survey and to make sure that you all have a clear understanding of the results of the survey that we put out on June 26th and got back on August 6th. And we also really want to spend time to hear your questions, your suggestions, and to help us as we make this important decision together. I also want to highlight that we are aligning our work. I have a 100-day entry plan that I've put out to the community that highlights a number of activities that we're going to do together in the first 100 days. And that plan is around 3 key areas of equity, engagement, and deep learning. And so you will see in this plan, and as we are planning here for reopening, we are being mindful of equity, engagement, and deep learning, and that's driving our work together. So our commitments, we are committed to using state and federal guidelines. There are state and federal guidelines that are pretty clear. They do provide flexibility, and they do, but they do also give us guidance and direction. We are consulting health professionals. So Ms. McCrae is on the call. She has been she's our COVID coordinator and has been a part of our meetings and has been an integral part of the decisions and discussions that we've had and the planning that we're doing. And she has been in close contact with the Department of Health. to make sure that we have up-to-date information as we're making decisions. We're going to prioritize student and staff health and safety. We have to make sure that we provide a safe return. We also want to make sure that we're providing deep, rigorous learning experiences. We're a learning organization, and we have to make sure that we prioritize student learning. And we know that students lost learning over last spring. And there are estimates that are pretty significant around the impacts of lost learning that we want to get back into school and mitigate. We also will ensure that we're building social and emotional learning in the work that we do, because we know that being away from school is not easy, and coming back is also a difficult transition. So we want to make sure, we will be making sure that we're spending time attending to the social and emotional needs of our students and our families and our staff, excuse me. And we will also ensure specialized services. So many of our students require specialized services, and we are committed to ensuring that we are providing those. In terms of our process, this process started with a task force that began in May. So the team has been planning since May for reopening, and it's a big lift. There's no question. Districts around the country are struggling with this, and we are, I think, ahead of the game and in a better position than other districts because Vermont has done such a good job of dealing with the illness. And so it's really helped us and allowed us to be able to plan to reopen in person. We have a task force that has multiple work groups, and we have representation from all different groups within our work groups. We put the survey out. We're doing town halls now. We really want to ensure that we're engaging. So right when I came in, I wanted to make sure we got a survey out immediately to hear what was going on. It's been a fast turnaround for our team and for you as well. But it's really important that we're making informed decisions that include you in that. We hope to make a decision. Our goal is to make a decision by August 4th. We hope to make a decision before August 4th, but we want to make sure that we're giving you a realistic timeline based on the new information that's coming in about COVID and about the guidance that we're getting regarding opening. And then we are preparing to be ready for school opening in person on August 26th, which is the current first day of school. There is some discussion about perhaps moving those days back across the regional superintendents to provide a little more time for planning. And we will be in constant contact with you if there are any changes to that. Currently, decision by August 4th, ready for start of school on August 26th. So we're focusing on a number of areas as we plan. First and foremost, we're, as I said, a learning organization. We are about student learning. And so we need to be serious about that and serious about academic progress for our students. That, for me, is the ultimate equity issue. Are we preparing students to be successful in the world after they finish in Burlington schools? We're going to be assessing student learning. We're going to be building plans for remote and in-person learning to make sure that both are part of this plan, because we know that we are going to need to do some of both in-person and remote learning to do this. We are ordering computers. Computers are on order, and technology. That's not all computers. There are some iPads for our younger students so that there's access. And we are focusing on social emotional learning, as I said, and restorative practices as we begin. Also, we'll be working on communication with a virtual learning webpage. Food services. I've been so pleased with our food services, reading about the food truck and the wonderful foods that we are providing each and every day to our students all throughout the day. And that's going to continue. That is something that has actually been one of the major pieces of connective tissue through this work from March until now. And so that will continue. However, cafeterias will not be open, the actual cafeteria space. So our food services, Mr. Davis and his team are a great team, and they're planning on making sure that there is food delivered to students and available each and every day. And on off days, if we go to a model where one day we're in school and the next day we're not, we will make sure that we are providing meals as well. Transportation is a big one. The health and safety requirements on buses are going to mean that we are not going to be able to have the same number of students on buses. And the majority of our students actually use GMT to get to school each morning. So this is going to be a big issue for us that we need to really come together as a community and work on, because it's going to take a number of different pieces to make sure we're able to get students into school. And one of those is just ensuring in any way possible that we're using different modes of transportation, whether it be walking, biking, personal family vehicles. And that's going to be a big piece of our coordination and something that we're going to really have to work together to make sure that we accomplish. We are also going to be reviewing the transportation needs of all of our students with disabilities and students with special transportation needs, and ensuring that we provide those. Facilities, as you've heard, I'm sure through the news, is a really big topic, and we are taking it very seriously. And so we're going to ensure that there are health screenings. Ms. McCrae is going to talk about that a little bit later, but that the buildings are ready with separate entrances so we can do those health screenings as we come in. Identifying any physical distance barriers that are needed, making sure we have the right number of desks and the right shape of desks so that we can practice physical distancing, and establishing sanitation and washing stations. And then also our facilities property management team are working hard. Mr. Spalding and his team are working extremely hard to make sure that ventilation and air quality standards are up to par, so that air quality is where it needs to be in our school, in our buildings, and in our classrooms. And that's a really important piece that we're working around the clock on. So at this point, I'm going to kick it over to Ms. McCrae to talk about health and safety. But I do want to say that we feel like we are in a good place to reopen in person this fall, and I'll reiterate that at the end. And the reason we do is because of the numbers in Vermont and because of the work this team has done to get ready. It's a huge lift. We need everyone involved, but we do believe we can do it. And I think it's been challenging the past couple of days. We've had some emails and just people feeling a lot of anxiety and understandably about this. But I have 3 daughters that will all be going to the schools. My daughters are going to be attending school, and I feel confident that we're going to have a safe environment. And I think really, if we look at the national news less around this, because the national news is really focusing on states that are that have spikes, are Florida, Texas, California, and other states where there are spikes. But we're in a place that's more like Denmark and Norway and Singapore, where we can learn from the experiences of their experiences coming back to school, where they have successfully come back to school in areas where the disease has not been as prevalent and has been better managed. So Ms. McCrae, can you take us on through these next couple of slides, please?
Yeah. So Superintendent Flanagan also asked me to share with you that not only am I involved in our district as a school nurse, but I am also the president-elect of the Vermont State School Nurses Association. And my work in that nonprofit has been very close with Dr. Brina Holmes, who's the director of maternal and child health at the Vermont Department of Health. And our work throughout the spring aided Dr. Holmes in helping to man the task force that the guidelines that we are now following came out of. And so I was on the team that helped to review those guidelines before they became official. And based on what I've been hearing and the knowledge that we have of the Vermont public health and contact tracing system, I truly feel as a nurse that it is in our best interest to have in-person learning and that we can do this in a safe and healthy way if we all work together, as Superintendent Flanagan has said. The guidelines that we are following do their very best to keep us safe and healthy, and we as a district will be making our decisions based on those guidelines. And these are some of the things that we will be doing to ensure the health and safety of everyone in the building. So we will be doing a temperature screening and a daily health check for students before they enter the building to ensure that everyone in our building is safe and healthy. People will be wearing cloth facial coverings. We'll have frequent hand washing throughout the day, and things in the room and materials in the room will be cleaned regularly. We'll also be following any Vermont Department of Health protocols if there is a COVID case in our community. And we'll be working very closely with the Public Health Department in contact tracing events. We also are going to limit visitors and volunteers so that we really are only having the necessary people in our buildings for learning to happen. We're also going to be using a pod system. If we could go to the next slide, please. We'll also be trying to use a pod system where we will have hopefully limited contact between a large number of people at any given time. Keeping the classes together and in the same group of students and teachers will ensure that everyone's health is intact, but also that we can have a clear system of contact tracing. We also have a lot of guidelines around the space between students and what we can do within a classroom so that we are ensuring social distancing, which is actually a term for physical distance apart. So that's the 6 feet apart from people. It is not implying that you should not be social. It is just a term for physical distancing. We also want to make sure that we have assigned sections of the schoolyard for recess so that those groups stay together as well. And it's really important that we hold virtual meetings for students and families and staff so that we are limiting our in-person contact in large groups. So as Superintendent Flanagan has said, we truly do need to work together to keep everyone safe and healthy. And that means that we really do need your help as the community to screen your own selves at home for any symptoms of COVID-19. And please stay home if you are experiencing any of those symptoms, and call your primary care provider so that you know what the next steps that you need to take are. In addition, before we start school, it would be helpful for every family to establish a primary care provider for their family and ensure that you have had your annual well check with your primary care provider and that you're up to date on immunizations. By ensuring that your student is in the best health to come to school will help us ensure that we can start school with healthy people in the building.
Thank you, Ms. McCrae. So now we're going to go through and Mr. Prusak is going to take us through the survey results so that you all can see what the community said as in response to the questions that went out in the survey.
Hi, everybody. So this survey was completed by about 70% of Burlington School District families, which was, I would say, quite a high return rate. We asked a series of questions. We're not going to go through all of them. in this slide here, it was asking you if we were to open up schools 5 days a week, having the safety precautions in place that are the ones that make a lot of sense, including masks, setting up other things in our school, would you be comfortable sending your kids to school? Like, would you send them? And as you can see from this, roughly 67% of folks said very likely or likely, and just over 12%, 12.5% said unlikely or very unlikely. Then we asked a similar question, but if we staggered our schedules so that only about half the number of students were in school at any one time to allow for better significant or more significant physical distancing, how likely would you be to send your students? So the same health precautions in place. And as you can see, the very likely and likely jumped up to 78%, and the unlikely, very unlikely, fell to 7%. And so that was sort of telling to us. We've all received a fair number of comments from folks saying that, well, that's not the question I would have wanted asked. I'd like to tell you which is my favorite one. That was deliberate on our part. We weren't looking for a vote system. We're trying to think about what is the most equitable system we can put in place to give the maximum number of students a robust education. And then we asked a question of an AM/PM schedule. And you can see from this, the numbers just started to shift all over the place. So we've basically taken that one off the table. There's also so many transportation and cleaning issues involved in that as well. We just really feel that's not a prudent one for us to take.
Mr. Prusek, can you just quickly explain what that would look like?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. So that would mean we would send students to school. You'd send students to school every day. And then half of them would come in the morning. At some point in the day, maybe 11:30, they'd leave. We would have to do some pretty quick and thorough cleaning, and another group would come in, and we would do that up to 5 days a week. That becomes a hugely problematic around transportation, particularly any public transportation. The cleaning aspect, giving teachers time to have their lunch, some contractual issues around that as well, as some preparation time. So we really felt that that would not create a smooth, robust transition for students back to school. Then when we talked about the alternating days schedule, and so some people call that an A-day, B-day schedule, a blue-white day schedule. So there's many iterations of that, but just for example purposes only, let's say my daughter goes to school Monday and Wednesday, and someone else's child goes to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then maybe we either do remote learning on Fridays or we alternate that Friday day. What became very clear from families is that if we're going to go to this model, the days themselves have to be fixed as much as possible. Can't send your kid Monday, Wednesday 1 week, Tuesday, Thursday the next week.
Thank you. So based on the survey, these are our current recommendations and decisions. And again, the final decision is not made. And we want to hear from you tonight. We are using the survey as feedback. Again, as Victor said, it's not a vote, but it's really important to us what you feel comfortable with and what you prefer. And also what our staff are comfortable with and prefer. And our staff feedback, I think it's important to know, and we're doing a town hall for staff tomorrow night, so anyone can join in for that as well. We're not too dissimilar. They were pretty close. So it looks like people are more comfortable with that alternating day schedule at this point. So our current recommendations and decisions are that we know this is not a decision. We are going to meet the current health guidelines and follow the Agency of Education's guidance for step 2. So the Agency of Education put out guidance on earlier in the summer and then revised the guidance on June 17th. So June 17th, and that's on the website for anybody to see. And what the Vermont Agency of Education has asked us to do across the state is to open it at step 2. So that's what we're planning to do. And we're planning to continue on that path and also just keep a really close eye on the current health guidelines coming out from the Department of Health and from the Agency of Education. So currently we're planning, there's a question here. Do we open pre-K and elementary schools in full, meaning all students are coming back to school, or in an alternating day schedule? Our middle schools, it's pretty clear, need to have an alternating day schedule with students in pods. It's much easier to have really small pods in middle school. High schools also are going to most likely need to start on an alternating day schedule. And that's going to be in alignment with regional high schools. So the regional high school principals have been also meeting regularly, as I've been meeting with the regional superintendents. And we are trying to get to alignment across the region. And I don't think we're far off. I think many of our partners across the region are in similar places. I know they are. And so that's important. And I think that will help as we do our planning, and as we work through this together as a community in Burlington and Chittenden County and in the region. We may need to stagger, so high school, it would also be an alternating schedule with pods that would need to most likely be a little bit bigger because of the amount of different kinds of classes that students need to take at high school. We may need to stagger arrival and dismissal, but that's dependent on the final model decision and some of the transportation decisions that and possibilities that we are still currently contemplating and working through. So at this point, we are going to open it up to questions. And we Avalon at Styles Ashley is going to moderate for us, and she will be reading the questions. And Victor or Avalon, can you give another quick update? Because I know we weren't able to update the slide for public view. So can you give an update on how to ask the question and what we will do if we are not able to get through all of the questions?
Sure. So I'm going to probably be the one who basically shares the question with you, Tom.
Okay.
And which everyone will hear. And then you'll start with responding to it or hand it off to one of the panelists. Any questions that we don't get to, and there's going to be many we're not, you're asking some really great questions here. And it's not that we don't want to answer them, it's just we can't get to all of them. So any of those questions we will put into a frequently asked questions document, put answers, responses to those, the best of our ability, and get those up on our website and notify families that those are up and can be read. Does that work?
That works.
Okay.
Did you mention the email address?
Oh, thank you. I have to look that up. I have it in front of me. Yes, you can also, after this session is over, or some of you have said on the YouTube channel, you're limited to 200, I think, characters, which really should be enough for a good question, but nonetheless, BSD reopening at bsdvt.org. So BSD, Burlington School District, reopening at bsdvt.org. And we will respond to those questions. And it doesn't have to happen tonight. You could send those questions tomorrow or the next day for that matter.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first question, will there be a fully remote option for families if they have immunocompromised people at home or would just feel more comfortable with remote learning?
We are considering a fully remote option for families. Yes, we still have to work out some of the details of that. And some of that has to do with how many staff we have who will be able to provide instruction in a remotely. But that is something that we are definitely planning for right now.
Will all elementary students be required to wear masks?
Almost all elementary school students will be required to wear masks, but there are some students for whom the mask is not an option, and so for various reasons. And so we will have, we have other ways of providing coverage. So through shields and other types of approved methods of providing protection there. I didn't say this earlier, but I want to make sure that people hear that we are currently running summer school right now. So I've been to visit the programs at our schools, and we have programs running at a number of our schools right now. And students are wearing masks. It's warm. They don't love the masks, but they understand. And I sat with a group of students today at a distance, and they shared with me what they were thinking about the school year. And so I think as the school year gets closer, students are feeling a little bit, they want to get back to school, and I think they're a little nervous. So I think that's part of our staying calm and grounding our thinking in the current evidence of where the disease is in Vermont and what it can look like to get back to school.
Another question. I know staff town hall is tomorrow. Do you have any sense now about how they feel about the options currently under consideration?
I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but there's a general feeling among staff. And I'm going to ask if Mr. Stiles could weigh in here as well, if you're okay with that, Andrew, and give us an update on kind of his thinking around this. But generally speaking, the numbers were pretty close between the family and the responses between the family and the staff surveys.
Yes, I'm trying to find the exact numbers right now from the survey, but we did find in the survey that staff generally followed the same patterns as parents in the community. So the majority of people were in favor of going into kind of the AB day situation. That was one of the leading ones. And then also it was a fairly similar rate to teachers compared to parents who are open to considering the full day every day. And so right now we have a lot of teachers and paraeducators who are involved in the working groups right now that are working to make sure that everything is done safely and everything is kind of following the direction that we've gotten from the surveys.
Okay.
And then
Mr.
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Brown. I'm sorry.
Let me say this. There's similar numbers with support staff. They want school to be open. They tend to lean toward the AB because a lot of my constituents are concerned about the cleaning, as you illustrated, Tom, and the other challenges around the first option. So our support staffs are ready to go, and they're leaning more towards the AB selection as well.
Thank you, Dwight. And I wonder if Mr. Restaghini or Ms. Johnson-Aiden, I don't know if, not to put you on the spot, it's okay if you if you can't answer this one yet, but I don't know if you have a sense from your staff or if you've talked to staff, any anecdotal information you have about coming back. I'm putting you on the spot, I see.
That's okay. I certainly am able to jump in. So the folks that I have been in contact with, for the most part, I wanted my teachers, and I think all elementary school principals felt the same way, that we wanted our teachers to be able to take a step back from what was a really intense few months. And specifically told them, I want you to disconnect. I'm going to send out fewer emails over the course of the month of the end of June and into July. We'll get back to business at the end of July and in the beginning of August. But for the folks that I've worked with directly on social emotional strategies to come back to schools, and I know other elementary schools, all the other elementary schools have a committee or a team that are working specifically on social emotional wellness of bringing students back from elementary school, from being on this break. They're all very committed to doing their best work, enthusiastic and hopeful, and also at the same time, making sure that we're just paying attention to how things are going in the community. But I think hopeful is probably the best word to describe how people are feeling.
Thanks,
I would agree with Joe that they're hopeful and feel the importance of having our K
Grab some
5
YouTube
students back in
questions. I've not
school.
been able to do that.
Sorry, say that again. I just added Victor to mute.
No, I was just agreeing with Joe. And I know that the elementary teachers really want to see the students back in school because we know how important it is, particularly for our kindergartners. So whatever we can do to get them there, we'll make it safe.
Great. Yeah, and I know people are, staff are in a lot of different places on this, as are families. But the prevailing feeling is that people want to come back to school.
Yeah.
Victor, do you have another question for us?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot you muted me. Thank you for doing that. So I have a couple questions here. There's a series of questions, and this might be better for Becca to respond to, but start with you, Tom, around if we were to have somebody in the school test positive. So somebody's not feeling well, they're home, they get a test, maybe they get sent home, staff or student. What does that do for the pod that student or staff was in?
That's a great question. And so much of it has to do with the specific scenario. So we do have we do have plans in place for this and protocols that are kind of state protocols or statewide, not just our own Burlington protocols that I think, yeah, Ms. McCrae would be able to speak to.
So if someone comes to school with COVID-like symptoms, they will be sent home and asked to go to their primary care provider. The primary care provider would then conduct an evaluation, and if someone needed to be tested, they would be tested in that primary care office. If the test came back positive, then the Vermont Department of Health would call the school nurse at the school to let us know that we have a positive case in our school. And then they would be asking us for detailed class lists and seat assignments, and so that they could conduct contact tracing around who that individual might be sitting next to or closest to. And the Vermont Department of Health, Public Health Department, would then give us guidance on who needed to be checked out by their primary care providers, who needs to be isolated, who can come back to school. So it doesn't necessarily mean that every child in the school has to be isolated if one case happens. It's definitely, like Tom said, a case-by-case situation, but we will be partnering very closely with the Vermont Department of Health and keeping very good, solid records of attendance in each classroom and each area in the building so that we know who's been with whom.
Okay. Tom, one of your 3 priorities is equity. What challenges do you foresee and what are your plans to address these challenges? And then there's a follow-up question, which is a misunderstanding. So if you could clarify this, Tom. My understanding is that New American families were not included in the survey.
Yeah, so we've been really conscious about reaching out to New American families and families who are multilingual families. And we are so fortunate to have our multilingual liaisons and Miriam Edesham Kading to help, who's our English learners director. We've been extremely happy to have them and really been leaning on them to make sure that we are providing as much access as possible. We have translated and interpreted every document that I've put out since I've been here. What was the second question, Victor?
Well, that was sort of the second one. The first one was just about equity in general. What challenges might you foresee and what are our plans to address these challenges?
The biggest equity challenge is around the expanding of the opportunity gap. So when students are away from school, they are not getting the learning that they need. And so what we know is that the students who need us the most don't have us when we're in remote learning situations. So deep rigorous learning where we have high expectations and high belief for what every single student in our district can do is core to how we're going to eliminate the opportunity gap. And we need to be serious about that, and not by having low expectations and not by under teaching or all the things that can happen when we don't believe in our students. I think the reason I want to get back to school the most is to make sure that all of our students, particularly our students who need us the most, are not losing learning.
Okay. There are a series of questions, so I'm just going to paraphrase, and they're all about air quality in our schools, HVAC systems. Some are talking about specific schools that have had less updating than others. Could you just talk a little bit about how we've been thinking through some of that?
Sure, I'm going to ask Mr. Lavery to weigh in there. Although I did get to see all of the ventilation systems at all the schools that I visited yesterday with Mr. Lavery. So that was good to see. So team's working hard, really hard on this and paying a lot of attention to it right now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Something that we're looking at the various options that we can put in place, particularly put in place on relatively short construction timeline. Folks may be familiar with the fact that part of the legislation passed in Montpelier statewide dedicated about $6.5 million toward HVAC upgrades statewide for schools and through a competitive grant process. We think we're well positioned to make a really strong application, partnering with Burlington Electric to take that on. So we're hopeful that we will have some extra funding to make some additional investments. But again, that's a statewide figure. We could easily spend $6.5 million in Burlington alone. So it's not going to meet all of the ideas that we could come up with. So we're continuing to explore options, both in terms of what we can do to physically upgrade those systems, or to add, whether they're upgrades centrally, or whether they're adding room specific improvements, because we do have some rooms that have less access to kind of the ventilation levels that we would like. And we're also exploring opportunities, particularly for the fall, with affording more opportunity for actual outdoor learning. So one of the best ways to improve access to fresh air is to actually be doing some of the learning outside. So we're looking at that as well.
There are a series of questions that some are school specific and some are not. When I say school specific, elementary versus middle versus high school, but a bunch of them have to deal with things like team sports, after school activities, drama, those types of things that we do a really great job with, but those happen after the school day. What is our thinking at this point around those?
I'm going to ask Mr. Lavery to weigh in a little bit, hopefully on some of the athletics. But we did move back the start date for preseason, for fall preseason. It was mid-August and it's moved into September, or late August or September. We are planning on having sports and activities. Drama and other art clubs and sort of everything we have. I know an important part of the community is what happens not just during the school day, but after school. And so that's something that is deeply valued by the community. I share that value. And so we are going to do as much as we can to make sure that those activities continue. However, we do need to be aware of the public health guidance around wind instruments, particularly in choir. There are some specific requirements that we are going to need to abide by that are changing slightly as day to day, but we need to make sure that we're following the guidelines around those more higher risk activities because of the spread of in the air and the aerosol of the molecules that go out there. So we have to make sure that we're paying attention to that very carefully. We also have to make sure that we are paying attention to the groups of students that are together at any given time and throughout the day and week. So we need to really figure out, and we are working on this, we are working to figure out how to keep the same group of students together as much as possible. That is that pod that you hear about. And the pod doesn't have a specific number, but the idea is that if you can, it helps with contact tracing. So if someone were to get sick, then you can more easily contact trace, which is an important strategy in managing this. Mr. Lavery, I don't know, maybe I called on you and you're not the right person to answer this, but.
You pretty much said it all, I think, so.
I would add to that, at least for the elementary, we are planning to do after school. So that will exist. And that's pretty important for a lot of parents, I know. So we're working on that, and Christy Galise is leading that effort and has done a great job this summer. So I think we'll be in good shape as it relates to after school.
And I'll just piggyback on that. The thinking right now is to do that within pods as much as possible. So if a child is in a homeroom with Andrew Stiles, who's on this call and is a 5th grade teacher, so there's 7 kids maybe who are doing after school, the thinking is that's the after school pod, those 7 students. That might shift a little bit, but that's our thinking right now. It keeps us being consistent. So there's a question about masks. So, and you already mentioned this, Tom, that the majority of students will have masks on. But what about for eating? What about PE, recess, those types of activities?
Yeah, so the masks will be in class when students are distanced in class, and when there can be some movement. We don't want school to be a robotic exercise where students can't move around. We have to allow students some movement, right, during the day. So, but they'll be in masks throughout that time. And the guidance is from the Agency of Education is that we maintain a 6-foot distance to the extent that we can, to the extent that's possible. So what we're thinking now is we design classrooms so that desk spaces can be 6 feet apart as much as possible, so that students, as we're designing a classroom, but there will be times when they're not 6 feet apart. So I think it's just an important distinction to make, and the guidance does give us leeway on that a little bit. And that's something that the regional superintendents and I have been wrestling with a little bit, is how to implement on that language. So in terms of eating, the students are not going to have their masks on while they're eating. And so that's sort of how it has to be, I think. But we will make sure, and maybe Ms. McCrae, I don't know if you can help me out on this at all. But we also are going to have time outdoors. We want to make sure that students have time outside. And so, as much as we can do our physical education, so different schools are kind of thinking about this differently, in how to provide breaks and get students out to exercise. So I think there are different ways to think about it. Ms. McCrae, did you want to add on to the eating and the
Sure. Yeah, you definitely can't eat with a mask on, but we will definitely be following guidelines where you must be 6 feet apart while you're eating, and hopefully a little bit more. If this means that we need to think about different spacing for half the class to eat in the classroom and half the class to eat in another space, these are all good things that we need to think about. But we're doing our best to work through all these questions, looking at the guidance, and then trying to figure out with our best critical thinking skills how to make it happen. While we're on the topic of masks, I did see a question about if there's going to be clear masks available to people. And that is also something that we are thinking through. And we are looking at not only that as an option, but plexiglass dividers and those different types of options. So we are looking at all of the angles for sure.
Okay, there's a series of questions that have to do with sort of the shifting landscape. So there's questions around if things are changing in Vermont, because right now in Vermont, we're doing really, really well, have been most of the time, other than our initial really harrowing stuff that happened in March. So if things should shift, who determines that it's time to rethink the model that we might be using? So that's a sort of general thing about, so where are we getting our information from? Who directs that? Is there choice involved by our district? And then the other one is, are we making plans to pivot between different models if the landscape changes from a health perspective?
Yeah, I think that I appreciate that question because it's a part of the planning that we've been doing. So back in May, Mr. Lavery, Ms. Anderson Brown were leading on this task force work, and I asked them to really think about different scenarios and being ready to flex between different scenarios at the drop of a hat. We have to be ready at an individual school level, at an individual classroom level, at a district level to say, hey, we're in a good place. We may be able to move to full in person, or we have a concern and we need to drop back to all online, all virtual. We mapped out those options early so that we know how to flex in between those options. And that's going to be a really important part of what we do, and a part of this equity imperative to not lose learning time and to make sure that learning time when students are home is meaningful. And I know it's hard. It creates a responsibility for all of us in a different way than when students are in school, but it's critical. So I think that we're going to be ready to pivot. The state will give us the step that we're in. So there are 3 steps. And so they'll say, you're in step 2 to start, but you could flex in, they'll tell us you need to go to step 3 or to step 1. And that's going to be in consultation with the Department of Health and with state public health officials.
There are a series of questions about the idea of an AB schedule, and essentially what's being asked, I believe, and I've had this conversation with a fair number of families. So let's say I have a student at an elementary school and a student at the middle school, or maybe even a student at elementary, middle, and high, as a few families have. Is there a way that we could get people on the same AB schedule, particularly as it relates to some transportation and childcare for the youngest kiddo?
Yeah, we are going to have to do the best we possibly can to coordinate those schedules so that first, students, if we did an alternating day schedule, would go to school on the same days, so that we wouldn't ask families to go from Monday, Wednesday on one week to Tuesday, Thursday on the next week. That just doesn't sound feasible, and it doesn't allow people to plan their lives accordingly. So yeah, we will make sure that that there's alignment there. There's a lot to think about, and so it's going to also require looking at our students and our families at the school level. So this is where we're gonna really the principals don't technically work throughout July, and they've been working every single day, all day throughout July, which I have great gratitude to them for just saying, hey, we're all in, and we need to be a part of this to make sure we open on time and safely. And that's where the schools really know their students the best, and really can understand from families where best, how best to organize the days. And then we also understand there's alignment across days with if you have children in multiple schools. So I'm going to have a daughter in middle school and 2 daughters in elementary school, and we're going to have to learn about how families want us to think about that. And we're going to have to schedule and make the best decisions that we can, but we also do want to get feedback. And I really do think it's an important decision that's going to be made to be able to run the school, but also to hear from families at the school level about how they're going to be scheduling students. I don't know if Bonnie or Joe, if you have any additional thoughts on that.
Tom, I think you nailed it. There's a million details to discuss about every aspect about bringing students back. And we certainly have been committed to planning for each one, including the options if we have to go back to distance learning, and trying to get our teachers prepared to do their best possible work if we have to go to distance learning. So it's just a tremendous a laundry list of details that needs to be worked through so that we're fully prepared. And we won't be for every option, but we're as best prepared that we can be to start the school year on the right foot for the kids.
Thank you.
Tom, I'm being mindful of the time, but I also know we had some technical difficulties at the start. So it's 8:01. Do we have time for a few more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Could you talk at all about any data, and by data, hard data and also soft data, what I call street level data, just conversations, what you see that we have collected from our summer school staff and or families?
I have a lot of street data. So I've had the opportunity to visit all the sites, and what I'm seeing is that, teachers have opted to at the sites have opted to, where we're offering summer programs, have opted to come in and to teach, and they are positive, and they are working hard, and it's not easy, and it's a little bit scary, and they are a really strong team. Miss Galisi, Christy Galisi is leading much of that work, all as well as Laura Nugent on the extended school year. And so what we're hearing is generally positive experiences. Really, I'm seeing really upbeat students and families in classrooms throughout the schools where we're offering summer programming, and also opportunities for students to get breaks and get outside. I just think we're learning so much about how to do this in the summer. We've learned about health checks. So one of the things we weren't sure about was how long it was going to take to do a health check. And we learned that it took 5 minutes each student in the first couple of days of the summer programming. And now we're down to about 1 minute per student. And maybe that was a few days ago. Maybe we're getting a little faster than that even. But we're learning through this process. And so I think health we're learning so much about how to do this through the summer programs. And I would say health screenings are a big piece of it, and just learning about the little, as Joe said, the details. Every single step you're taking, you have to think about differently. So this requires us to change the way we're thinking about how school works. But when you walk in, it looks like school. Kids are in classes, teachers are teaching, students are learning, and they want to share and talk. And so it's I think a really important experience for us to have had this summer experience. I don't know, Mr. Stiles, can I ask you, can I put you on the spot about teachers? Have you heard anything about summer and sort of how people are feeling about summer?
Yes, I actually had a conversation with a couple of people from the summer programs today, and they were talking about the things that they've kind of gotten in the rhythm with. And so, yes, the health checks have the time has been reduced for that. And they're also starting to provide a lot of feedback about things that worked and did not work, that we need to take into consideration for next year. And that those are things from, exactly how to keep students separated, the way to have students coming into the building, and kind of the way to speed up health checks, and also kind of keep a, sorry about all those things.
That's okay. People are saying, hey, why are you saying that?
Okay, so what I have been hearing is pretty good results. There are some things that we need to be looking at in terms of, the structures for recess, moving around the building and things like that. But right now they're finding that things have been going fairly well in a lot of places. And, there's still going to have to be a lot of work of teaching procedures and things like that to make sure that students are keeping their masks on and that they're washing their hands, and kind of keeping all of that, safe.
Thank you. Yeah, and we know it's not perfect. We are learning as we're going, but teachers are doing an amazing job. I'm I'm not making this up right now. I've been really impressed with the work that's happening over the summer. I know people are committed. I know there are things that people are concerned about, and we need to address. And those are the things that we're learning about as we're experiencing this together. Mr. Brown, I don't know if you had any feedback on summer programs.
Well, I went into a couple of classrooms today doing my work as a tech specialist, and the kids were engaged, and the teachers look committed. Our food service staff are working hard. I just want to talk about them for a minute. What a group of people, how they performed during the first shutdown. They gave our kids 3 meals a day and gave them enough food on Fridays to last the weekend. I mean, during the peak of this pandemic, we used those systems to get devices to families who didn't have one, because we were in kind of a pinch in a communication thing. So we used those systems that they were out there to get those devices to families that were coming to pick up food, which worked out kind of great. So I talked to some of our custodial staff and our trade staff today, and things are working out. Teachers had some requests for things that they wanted to make sure they were safe, and those things happened fairly quickly. So I was happy with everything I see. I haven't heard any negative comments from teachers or support staff, and I think that's a good thing. I think that speaks to a lot of the planning that's being done and the commitment of our teachers and our staff.
Thank you. Victor, you're on mute.
I don't think I did that.
I did.
There's questions about remote learning and about professional development, professional learning for our staff. So basically the idea being that we pivoted, as Dwight said, and went into a remote period of time where we didn't have a lot of time to prep for that, or really any time to prep for that. What are our plans around professional development for our teachers, for remote learning? And I would just add, I mean, in general, to get prepared for what is going to be a different experience, whether we're in person or remote.
Yeah, so I mean, I said earlier, our teachers, I sometimes make that mistake, our educators. We have teachers, paraprofessionals, speech and language pathologists, social workers, psychologists, all kinds of educators in the building to support our work. And I've been really impressed with their commitment to this work, and we need to invest in them. It's our responsibility as a district to say that, you know, we see the work that you're doing, and sure, we all we are about getting better together, right? But we need to make sure that we're focusing on professional learning, because it's a new world. It really is a new world of teaching and learning that we're thrust into immediately. So one of the things in my entry plan was to ask our executive director, Stephanie Phillips of teaching. She's our teaching and learning executive director. Many of you I know her, to think about a professional learning plan with this in mind. So she's been working with her team. So Stephanie, I don't know if you want to talk, if you were able to talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Sure, thank you. So we did a number of surveys of staff throughout the initial maintenance of learning, and then when we went into continuity of learning, to get feedback of what was working at each of those phases and what were the challenges. And we have been very thoughtful about using that survey data. We were able to put out to teachers right the last week of school some options that we had been made aware of for online professional development that they could take advantage of this summer, that were happening from various vendors that we interact with on a regular basis. But we've been spending a lot of time this summer thinking about what we want to do and offer our students, offer our teachers when they return, so that they're best prepared to support our students. So our in-service plan in August has already been created to think about those opportunities for professional learning. So what teachers have asked for as it relates to technology and the how to use specific tools, but then also what are really the best practices for using those tools in the classroom. So we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to provide teachers with that professional learning to start their year. Many of them will start the year incorporating some of these new tools into their teaching and learning, even when they have students in person, so that they can get students very comfortable with the technology and the tools, and also themselves as teachers providing instruction. We're also very aware that one of the things that teachers asked us for was to be mindful about how we could support them and provide professional learning as it relates to supporting the social emotional needs of our students. We know that by the time we return, we will have been apart for more than 5 months. And so teachers have asked us to be really mindful about that in our professional learning. And we're prepared to give them those tools as part of our in-service time in August and ongoing throughout the first few months of school. So we're really trying to be responsive to what staff have asked for, both as it relates to professional learning around social emotional needs of staff and students, and also from a remote learning and a use of technology tools.
Thank you. And I would just say this is the work. I said it in the beginning. I'm really serious about it. We are about student learning, and we have to be serious about this work. And to do it, we have to invest in our educators. And I know Mr. Stiles and I have talked about that a lot. And it's just really it's the core of our work. And so we have to really prioritize that, and everything that we do feeds into that.
I'd add too, if that's okay for a moment, Ms. Phillips and I have actually had quite a bit of discussions about how this is going to look when we start up the school year. And so we are going to be prioritizing making sure that teachers are familiar with the tools that they're using, and then also getting some work on best practices being done over both in person, but especially over remote learning.
So Tom, 2 final questions, totally unrelated. One of them, is there any plans or thoughts towards another survey to family or other surveys to families?
We're not currently planning another survey. There's a fear of over surveying, and which I understand right now. If people are ready to take a survey, we had great response on the first one. So I understand the question, and I appreciate the question. I think for us, for me and for the team, it's attention, right? Because we're hearing from a lot of families to say, just make a decision and let us know, and we can keep moving and plan our lives. And then from others, we're saying, I'm not quite sure yet, right? So we're just trying to balance that and make sure that we're hearing all the voices. We have the most informed, we have the most up-to-date information on health guidance and health statistics in the area before we announce a decision. And then also there's a piece of working with the regional superintendents, where I'm a part of the group that's working with the regional superintendents to create alignment across that group as well. So there's some consistency across the region, because a lot of our teachers and families cross over between districts. And so as much as there can be some alignment there, the better. So right now we're not currently planning to send out another survey, but I would be open to it. But we just need to know that we will have to make a decision soon.
And then a final question. There's actually some specific things. I'm going to generalize it, and I apologize if some people don't like me generalizing, but it gets at a broader group of questions than just one. Is what type of partnership are we doing with the city on any of this work?
Sure. So we've been working closely with the city on planning. Actually, Victor, you can talk about this one, right?
Okay, that wasn't why I served it up, but that's fine. I'm happy to. Yeah, so the city, before we even shut down schools, the city asked for there to be a district representative to a department heads meeting that they were having every day, every morning at 8:30. Obviously, the focus of that has shifted over time. The district suggested that I be the person on that, so I've stuck with that. Now it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We have been coordinating with them around messaging, particularly around COVID testing that you've seen probably popping up all over town. We've been working with them on food distribution and partnering with the libraries around that, and also with King Street Youth Center and a toy purveyor out of Virgins, Wow's Toys, where we distributed toys. And now really it's more of the nitty gritty of them asking us, what do we need from them or in general to help us make informed decisions of how to reopen and what resources might we need? So, you know, is there anything around transportation like bike lanes or busing? Are there alternative swing spaces maybe we could use? Do we want to maybe take over things like Burlington City Arts, Miller Center? I mean, other things. When I say take over, this is a cooperative endeavor here. Like, would that help us? And so that partnership has been great. There's some new opportunities and relationships that have developed there. Tom comes to those meetings periodically, and obviously if I'm there and I'm asked a question I don't know, I just give Tom a call and he jumps on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Tom, before you wrap up, I just want to say there's a tremendous number of questions, really great questions. We didn't even get to all the topics. We are going to post every single one of these questions. We might not post an answer to every single one right away, but we will get those questions out there. There are definitely some suggestions around making sure that we are reaching all different, a range of families. Special education came up. Those may be our particular needs. Do we want to have a town hall just for families of students who receive special education services? There's a whole lot there, and we will bring this back to our whole team to reflect on and think about what other actions do we need to take. So thank you for those.
Thank you, and thanks for all the questions. We truly appreciate it, and we are going to look at each and every one of those questions and develop an FAQ and also answer as many of the questions as we possibly can. We may need to group some. I haven't actually seen them, so I'm not sure the number, but we do appreciate the feedback and the outreach and the questions and the suggestions. So our next steps here are, like I just said, to review the questions. This is the email, so if there are additional questions or ideas you want to send our way, this is the email address to send that to, bsdreopening@bsdvt.org. We're going to develop an FAQ to clarify decisions and next steps. I mentioned working with the regional superintendents and keeping a close eye on the AOE guidance and any updates there, and also the Vermont Department of Health guidance, and then making decisions about those, making decisions. So we're aiming again for by August 4th. We have another town hall tomorrow night. That is designed for staff, but it's open to the public. And so it'll be a similar presentation to tonight. And then the questions will be slightly different. But I really want to thank you all for coming out. Our priorities are equity, engagement, and deep learning. We truly want to engage with you, engage with our partners, and make the decision that is best for our students, that will get our students back to school safely and get them learning and get us back together as a community in a safe and productive fashion. And so I just want to thank you all. I've received a number of emails from families who I know are on the call tonight and others. And I just want to really thank everybody for the really warm welcome that I've received. I didn't expect to enter into my first superintendent position during a pandemic, but this is the important work that is in front of us, and I'm looking forward to it. And we have a strong team to help build the plans to make sure we open safely. And I know that the community is going to rally around us and work together as a team to make sure that we get this done together for our students. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Again, we're open and available. So we look forward to continuing to engage, and we will have next steps that come out of this, that we communicate with you through the FAQ, through the website, and through the also weekly communications we're sending out. We're sending out a weekly communication that hopefully everyone is receiving. That's a letter from me and a joint letter from Mr. Stiles and Mr. Brown, and updates on where we are. So we'll be continuing to send those out and being present on social media and all those things too. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you everyone for being on. We appreciate you.